Some stories begin quietly, unnoticed. Some pain grows slowly, invisible, creeping into every corner of life. This is the story of a woman, a mother, who slowly disappeared behind the life she had promised to live. She remembered the day she first held her baby. Tiny hands, soft skin, perfect little face, and she swore she would protect this life. Those first days were magical. Endless love, endless wonder. But even magic can fade, and soon the exhaustion arrived, like a shadow she could not shake. Nights stretched endlessly. She would watch her baby sleep and wonder if she was becoming a stranger to herself. The house was quiet, but never silent. There was always work to do, dishes to wash, bottles to prepare. Her husband was there, but his mind was elsewhere, buried in emails, projects, and obligations. He loved her, but he did not see her struggle. Not yet. She tried to remind herself that this was temporary, that soon they would fall into a rhythm. But the days blended into nights. The rhythm never came. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the city, wondering if she was losing herself. She remembered the first argument they had after the baby was born. Something small, trivial, a forgotten chore, a missed call, but it revealed something larger. Their inability to communicate, to understand each other's exhaustion and frustration. Sometimes she cried quietly, hoping he wouldn't hear. Other times she just sat in silence, rocking her child, feeling a hollow ache in her chest. She thought about all the little dreams they had shared and how motherhood, while beautiful, had quietly consumed her identity. She began to notice the subtle distance growing between them. A glance not returned, a conversation that ended abruptly, a sigh when she entered the room. It wasn't anger, it wasn't resentment, it was absence. The absence of attention, of empathy, of connection. She remembered the evenings when she tried to talk. "I feel lost," she whispered. He would nod, distracted, unsure, and the conversation would drift away, leaving her loneliness untouched. Sometimes she would step outside with her baby in her arms, looking up at the dark sky, thinking about what it meant to disappear slowly, to be surrounded by people, yet feel completely alone. She would breathe in the cool night air, clutching her child, and whisper promises to herself she didn't know how to keep. The first months felt endless. She watched herself transform in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her body, her emotions, and her dreams, all reshaped by a life she had embraced willingly. And yet a part of her felt trapped, fading, invisible. She would replay memories of their life before the baby. Trips to the coast, long evening walks, coffee on rainy mornings. Those moments now felt like someone else's life. Someone distant, someone she barely remembered. Even her husband noticed the change, but his attempts at helping were clumsy, misdirected, sometimes making the silence worse. he was exhausted too, caught in his own pressures and unaware of how deep the cracks had grown between them. She'd lie awake, baby finally asleep, and wonder if anyone would ever see her again. And slowly, without drama, without confrontation, a realization settled. Love alone would not save them.
The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. She noticed the subtle changes first. The way he no longer met her days, the way laughter in the house had grown quiet. Even small gestures felt absent. A hand held, a kind word, a smile, each one now rare, fleeting. She tried to fill the silence with routines, feeding, bathing, rocking, the endless cycles of care. Her child depended on her, and that responsibility became both a comfort and a burden. She loved her baby fiercely, but with every passing day, she felt herself slipping further into the background of her own life. Her mind wandered often, tracing back to the life they had shared before this chapter began. Evenings spent talking about dreams and future plans now seemed like echoes from a distant, unreachable place. She remembered the warmth of his embrace, the comfort of shared laughter, and the sense that together anything was possible. Now, she craved connection that never came. She reached out sometimes only to be met with distraction or misunderstanding. Each attempt chipped away at her hope, leaving a hollow ache that grew heavier with every passing day. She began to question herself. Was it her fault? Could she have been more patient, more understanding? Was she asking for too much? The questions circled endlessly in her mind, each one heavier than the last. The love she felt for her child was unwavering, yet it could not mend the rift that had grown in their marriage. Arguments became rarer, not because they were resolved, but because they had stopped trying. Silence replaced conversation. Physical proximity replaced intimacy. She sometimes wondered if he even noticed her despair, or if he had grown accustomed to it. Just another quiet background to his life. She began to observe herself in ways she had never before considered. The exhaustion, the self-doubt, the moments of sadness that she thought she hid. She realized they had become part of her identity. And yet, deep within, she still longed to be a woman she had been before motherhood, before the house had grown so silent. Occasionally, she would catch glimpses of the past in small moments. A familiar song playing on the radio, a scent that reminded her of happier times, a photograph of them laughing together. These sparks would ignite a fleeting warmth, only to fade into the quiet realities she faced now. She tried to share her feelings with him, but the words seemed to vanish between them. "I'm lost," she whispered one night. He nodded, unsure how to respond. And that was the moment she understood. They were no longer speaking the same language. Her solitude deepened not because of hate or anger, but because connection had been replaced by absence. And in the stillness of the house, she began to feel the weight of disappearing, not physically, but emotionally, slowly fading from the life that she had once known. She thought often about what it meant to be invisible in your own home. The nights were the hardest, when everyone slept, and only the ticking clock reminded her of the passage of time.
She would cradle her child, breathe in the soft rise and fall of tiny chests, and wonder if she would ever recognize herself again. Her affections often circled around the what ifs. What if he had noticed sooner? What if she had spoken differently, acted differently, reached out more? But life rarely answers such questions, and she learned that acceptance, though painful, is sometimes the only way forward.
By now, the days had taken on a monotony that felt endless. Even when he was present in the room, it felt as though they were separated by invisible walls. She longed for conversation, a shared glance, a word of understanding, but these moments had all but disappeared. She remembered the last time they laughed together. It wasn't a loud, carefree laugh. It was soft, hesitant, as if testing the waters. Even that faded quickly, replaced by silence, exhaustion, and the weight of unspoken words. Counseling had been suggested months ago, but even there she felt the distance between them. The therapist asked questions, tried to bridge the gap, but the words felt hollow. She spoke of his exhaustion, of loneliness, of fading love. He spoke of stress, deadlines, responsibilities. Both left the sessions feeling untouched, still separated by invisible chasm. She would sit at the kitchen table late at night, baby finally asleep, staring at the empty chair across from her. Sometimes he would join her silently, and they would eat in quiet companionship, but not connection. She realized that this quiet, this absence of dialogue and understanding had become the new normal. And in that realization came a grief far deeper than any argument could have caused. The small frustrations of daily life now carried enormous weight. A misplaced item, a forgotten task, a passing comment, each one a reminder of the distance between them. She tried to approach him gently, but even the softest words often felt flat. He seemed tired, distracted, and at times defensive. And she, weary and fragile, found it increasingly difficult to reach him. She started thinking about herself more than she had in months. The woman she had been before motherhood, before the sleepless nights, before the unspoken distance. She longed to find her again. She questioned whether she had lost herself entirely, or if there was still a part that could be reclaimed. Her emotions became unpredictable. Moments of deep sadness could come without warning, often triggered by small, insignificant events. A baby's cry in the middle of the night, a door slammed too hard, or even the soft hum of the refrigerator could send her into silent tears. She learned to hide them, to breathe quietly, to maintain the facade of strength. Meanwhile, he began to withdraw as well. Perhaps he sensed the growing divide. Perhaps he felt powerless. Conversations, once familiar, became strategic, focused on practicalities rather than feelings. The intimacy they once shared now felt like a distant memory, a ghost of what had been. They tried to cling to the rituals that had once brought them together, a sharing cup of coffee in the morning, a short walk after dinner, but even these small gestures felt empty, as if they were performing roles rather than living lives together. She started considering what it would mean to leave. Not out of anger, not out of hatred, but because staying felt like losing herself completely. Every day she felt a little more invisible, a little more hollow, a little more consumed by the routines and expectations of a life that no longer includes connection. Packing her thoughts and small belongings became a quiet ritual of preparation.
She imagined a life where she could breathe again, where she could be seen and heard, not just by others, but by herself. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. And yet, even in these moments of reflection, she felt guilt. Guilt for leaving, guilt for wanting more, guilt for desiring a life that she could not find within the walls of her own home. She realized that love alone was not enough to sustain them, and acceptance of that truth was both painful and necessary. The distance between them had become a chasm, one that no amount of effort, therapy, or conversation could bridge. Sometimes she would catch him watching me, a silent question in his eyes, but I had no answers left to give. The emotional bankruptcy of their shared life had grown too vast, and both knew it. No, neither spoke aloud.
The decision had been made quietly, without shouting, without confrontation. It was not sudden. It had been building for months, a slow realization that love, while present, could no longer bridge the gap. She began the careful, deliberate process of preparation, packing clothes, organizing baby's things, deciding what would come with her and what would stay. Every folded shirt, every small toy, every piece of furniture carried with it memories, fragments of a life now ending. She noticed the weight of each action. Each decision felt monumental. A drawer that she had opened yesterday seemed impossibly heavy. A picture frame that she had smiled at weeks ago now brought tears she could not contain. He watched quietly, sometimes offering help, sometimes simply standing aside. The unspoken grief between them was palpable, more profound than any argument could ever express. It was a grief not of hate, but of loss. Loss of what had been and loss of what could have been. She spoke to him one last time in earnest, her voice trembling but steady. "I need to find myself again. Staying, it means disappearing completely." He nodded, finally understanding, and the silence that followed spoke volumes more than words could ever. The final days were measured in small rituals, ordinary tasks heavy with emotion. She bathed her child, fed her, rocked her asleep with a tenderness that carried both love and sorrow. Each action was an affirmation of care, even as the reality of leaving loomed near. She reflected on the years they had shared, the laughter, the dreams, the fleeting moments of joy, now tinged with the awareness that time could not be reclaimed. Her heart ached not for the departure itself, but for the accumulation of unspoken words, lost opportunities, and faded connections. The house felt emptier at each passing day. Rooms that had once been filled with warmth and chatter now echoed only with faint memories. Every corner held a trace of them, reminders of a life that no longer belonged entirely to them. She had grown stronger in her solitude, even while emotionally exhausted. The preparation was not just physical, but mental and emotional, a reclamation of self she had neglected for too long. She whispered promises to herself, pledges to rediscover who she was beyond this chapter. At times, guilt returned, insistent and heavy. Guilt for leaving, guilt for desiring more, guilt for the inevitable change. But she understood that staying would have meant losing herself completely, a slow disappearance that neither of them could endure. The final morning arrived quietly,
sunlight spilling through the windows, illuminating the familiar rooms for the last time. She cradled her child, inhaling the scent, memorizing the moment, holding it close like a lifeline. He stood by the doorway, silent, his expression a mixture of sorrow and acceptance. No words could capture the complexity of the years they had shared. He understood now fully that love alone could not undo the distance that had grown between them. She took a final glance around the house. Each room, each object, each memory, a fragment of the lives they had built together, now left behind. She stepped outside with her child in her arms, feeling the weight of departure, but also the fragile stirrings of hope. The door closed softly behind her, a final punctuation to a chapter that had lasted far longer than any moment of conflict. Driving away, she felt a mix of grief and liberation. She had loved, she had lost, she had endured, and now she could begin again. Some stories do not end with happiness. Some stories are about survival, resilience, and the quiet reclamation of self, and this was hers. She would remember, she would mourn, and she would carry forward. Disappearing after motherhood had not meant the end, it had meant a painful, necessary beginning.